Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Master Menopause Metabolism podcast with Coach Andrea Tornes. And I am going to shed light on basically talking about your brain is not broken. It's adapting. And here's what that actually means. So we're going to go over all of that. Why, when you walk into a room, you feel like you can no longer remember what you went in there for, or, overall just like forgetting names, all of that, and why it's not breaking down. Basically, you're adapting. All right, let's get into it. So let's talk about why so many women feel like in menopause or perimenopause that they are losing themselves. And the questions that we start asking is like, why is my memory slipping at work? Why can't I find the word that I'm looking for? Why do I feel like a different person? I think that's the number one thing as I've, looked at Mary Claire Haver, her stuff, like basically that is what women number one say. They don't say I'm having hot flashes, which is one of the common symptoms, but it's more, I just don't feel like myself. And they start asking questions like, is this just aging? And instead of that, I love the book Menopause Brain by Lisa Mosconi. It's really amazing. So if you have not read that book, I highly suggest it, but today we're going to basically hit on all the points about what is actually going on, why we feel different emotionally, why our brain is working different, and it's not anything abnormal or bad. It is really part of the evolving brain that we have from the hormones adapting and getting different. So let's talk about maybe a new way to see it. So most women are told that their symptoms are just getting older, but emerging neuroscience tells a really different story. And it's all about what's happening in midlife isn't a cognitive decline, it's hormonal brain remodeling that's been largely overlooked because we're women, right? We're not going to be studied. We're not on the forefront in a man's world. I mean, honestly, we are late. They're late to the game on, discovering these things. But the good news is that they are starting to look into it. We're getting more data. But it's understudied and honestly misunderstood. So this is about basically, changing the narrative, and it starts with each and every one of you ladies. So menopause is not the brain failing. So the old story was, we were forgetting words, we were feeling foggy and mood swings and signs that you're declining. Expect less from yourself. This is just aging. Or my number one, you guys know, is the doctor saying, oh, gaining weight is part of the process. It's like, is it? But the new story is honestly the brain is undergoing a significant hormonal transformation or transition, and the symptoms are signals of adaptation, not permanent deterioration. So when we're shifting and your hormones are changing rapidly, estrogen's declining, becoming different daily, progesterone, all of that, not only does our metabolic health kind of suffer or change, we also understand the neuroscience that, we need to stop blaming ourselves and start making empowered brain first decisions. So the deeper we look into this, I think you're going to have a lot of hope and excitement for who you are truly becoming, and that we, in a lot of ways, are working smarter, not harder. So you don't have the bandwidth for inauthentic people, right? Or spending time around people that are draining your energy. Like that starts to become like you just don't have the tolerance for it anymore. So you become more honest. And honestly, I think it's a good thing. But if we look at it, most people think of estrogen as a reproductive organ, right? Or hormone organ, but it plays a profound role in brain function throughout a woman's life. So when estrogen levels shift, the brain feels it in multiple measurable ways. Okay. So just like it has a slower response to fat loss and can't deal with stress as well, there's also the fuel that fuels basically our brain energy. So estrogen drives glucose metabolism in the brain, the primary fuel source for cognition, focus, and mental clarity. So it also supports our synaptic connections. So it promotes the health of the synapses, the communication bridges between brain cells, keeps our thinking sharp and fluid. Okay. So that's why you see, a bubbly 20-something-year-old and you're worn out just listening to a 3-minute conversation on the table next to you of what she's saying she's going to accomplish and do. And honestly, that used to be you. So there is a part of the grieving process too. We'll get to that, but that is part of that. The other part is it regulates our mood chemicals. So estrogen influences serotonin and dopamine production. So the neurotransmitters most responsible for mood stability and motivation are being switched around, changed. And it also shapes our memory. So it supports our hippocampus, the brain's memory center, making estrogen directly linked to how well we encode and recall our information. So what the brain shift looks like is estrogen declines during perimenopause and menopause, and brain energy metabolism changes. These aren't imagined symptoms. They're neurological and hormonal in origin. So brain fog, right? Difficulty concentrating, feeling mentally cloudy, slower processing speed are among the most common and distressing symptoms women report. Word finding issues. So you're not going crazy, ladies. This is a real thing. And others in your age group and going through this are also struggling with this. So the frustrating tip of the tongue feeling, like, what was the name of that movie? Or what was the name of the restaurant we went to yesterday? The words there, but just out of reach. And it takes a little longer for you to bring it to memory. Okay. And it's a hallmark of estrogen's influence on verbal memory pathways. And then irritability, anxiety, low mood. It's not about character flaws. It reflects real shifts in serotonin and dopamine. And then that sleep disruption. So estrogen and progesterone both regulate sleep. When they are lower or fall, because if we remember the cycles, we're going to go over this. Basically, in a normal 28-day cycle, when a woman gets her period, in order for that to happen every month, we're working to create, conception, right? And so that egg is released. And so that means day 1 through 14, estrogen is rising to its peak, and then it starts to slowly fall, and then progesterone comes up until the cycle when estrogen and progesterone are both at its lowest during the cycle. Fast forward to menopause, that is where we live basically in our menstrual cycle as far as hormones go. So progesterone and estrogen are both very low. And so that deteriorates our sleep, and it compounds every other cognitive symptom. Hence why in perimenopause, or even during our menstrual cycles all the way around, we may have had issues falling asleep, staying asleep, etc. And it can directly be because of the hormones. So the brain is remodeling now, ladies. It's not deteriorating. So what Mosconi's research shows is that neuroimaging research at Cornell has been groundbreaking, using PET and MRI scans, and documented that menopausal brain undergoes measurable structural and metabolic changes. But critically, many of the changes are temporary. So keep that in mind. If you can remember, ladies, brain volume shifts occur during perimenopause. Metabolic activity temporarily decreases in some regions. Post-menopause, the brain often rewires and stabilizes. So this is kind of why sometimes, when I'm talking about my program or redoing things or whatnot, a lot of ladies in menopause are like, things have kind of stabilized. I feel better now. And, that's a very common thing I see, which gives us a lot of hope. The issue is that if we haven't done the work because of the changes to get our body back, it continues to kind of decline. But the good news is if you do the work on that and get everything back in line post-menopause, usually will kind of stabilize, okay? Brain activity as well. So cognitive function frequently recovers to baseline or beyond. So in the transition with the beginning, a middle, and an end, the women who come out on the other side with really strong cognitive health are often those who understood what was happening and took action to support their brain during the process. Think of it as like a renovation. The house isn't falling apart. it's being upgraded and it looks messy in the middle. And I think that's such a good analogy because who doesn't hate remodel? Because like who hasn't, if you've ever had your kitchen remodeled, I mean, if you haven't had a camping stove in your living room that you're cooking dinner on one night, yeah, I don't think you've had your kitchen remodeled, but it is not fun. Plus sheetrock dust and all sorts of stuff. It's pretty messy, but you have this key thing in mind, which is that beautiful kitchen you will have in a very short time if you just hang into the messy middle. That's what we're going through, ladies, the messy middle. And it can be stronger and more beautiful than ever before. So let's talk about, a critical conversation, women among Alzheimer's patients. So 2 out of 3 people living with Alzheimer's are women, a disparity that can no longer be explained by longevity alone. So the risk window begins in midlife. So research suggests that brain changes associated with Alzheimer's risk may begin accumulating during the menopausal transition, not in old age. So hormone shifts, particularly in the drop of estrogen, are being studied as contributing to disappropriate Alzheimer's risks. This is where conversations about hormone therapy, hormone replacement therapy, and timing are increasingly relevant, and why it's important to not demonize this treatment, but to look at like actually what it can do for your body and your brain in that midlife time and as you get older. So basically the evidence is evolving, individual circumstances vary really widely, and the goal is to inform conversation with a knowledgeable provider, not a perspective recommendation. So someone who actually knows the risks and the data, not just an emotional decision. So, I think it's important to ask yourself, where were you told it was just aging? Or what did you assume it meant about you? What did you assume? And I think that's really important because we will also kind of ride out the story. If we think it was just aging, we're not going to do a lot to make changes, right? But if we understand it's temporary and it's something that we can work with, and we can put things in with our nutrition, we can put things in with our sleep to supplement, we can also do HRT. We can even add in a peptide to kind of rise to the occasion and try to keep things as optimal as possible. You're going to fare a lot better. So, brain first living, what really actually moves the needle? So, these aren't generic wellness tips. So based on Mosconi's framework and current neuroscience, there are evidence-informed strategies that specifically support the female brain during and after the menopausal transition. So the first brain first action plan would look like blood sugar stability equals brain stability. So the brain runs on glucose, but sharp spikes and crashes are destabilizing. So prioritizing protein, this is why we talk about that, fiber and healthy fats at every meal, reducing your refined sugar and foods to smooth out your brain's energy supply throughout the day is going to really carry you. The second thing is the strength training supports our cognition. So resistance exercise isn't just for muscles, it increases our brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Wow, big word. Literally a growth hormone for your brain. So aim for 2 to 3 strength sessions per week to protect memory and executive function. So it's not just about, it's nothing to do about bulking up, okay? It's literally about getting your body to do the strength training to failure with less reps, really focusing because it's helping your brain and your growth hormone. Sleep protection is non-negotiable. So during sleep, the brain clears metabolic waste, including proteins linked to Alzheimer's. Prioritize 7 to 9 hours of sleep, address any kind of night sweats, anxiety, and sleep disruptions proactively rather than pushing through or accepting them. So really tirelessly until that goes with sleep, find a way to get your sleep in check because your body is doing a lot during your rest time. And even if you're like, I can deal with this, I can tell you on the flip side, there's a lot that your body is not happy about because of that. So we got to find a way. Okay. So make glycinate, make sure to have that. Turn off your screens before bed. Keep a cool room. Make sure to, even like I had to switch some workouts around because my body was overly stressed during the day. Track yourself with an aura ring, like get an idea of what your body's state is and what your actual sleep is looking like. And then stress management is neurological protection. So I had a very stressful job for, a number of years where I was trying to hit a bottom line and I was pushing myself and I was like, this is okay because it's for the greater good. I'm helping people. I'm doing things for I'm showing my kids a good example, et cetera, et cetera. But at some point I had to really look in the mirror and say, my A1C is high. I'm not sleeping very well. I'm gaining belly fat and I'm not really eating enough. And I'm pretty stressed out. And, this directly damages the hippocampus, the brain's memory center. So things like meditation, breath work, boundaries, rest are not luxuries. They're not something that you're going to do later. It really is something that you need to incorporate now. They're brain medicine, and you got to build them into your daily structure. So this is why the eat less, move more isn't enough in midlife. So the brain first priorities need to be stabilizing blood sugar, lifting heavy things, protect your sleep, feed your brain with omega-3s. So if you're getting way too much omega-6s, even that out. Give yourself some omega-3s every day. Manage cortisol daily. I do 1,000 milligrams of, vitamin C right away in the morning, and ask better questions of your providers. So, or, find a coach, learn about these things. It's going to get you into the next realm of life in a really healthy way. And it's not a cognitive decline, it's a neurological recalibration. You are not losing it. This is temporary and you have agency. So every symptom you've experienced has a neurological and hormonal explanation. You are never going crazy, you are adapting. And it is going to get better. It's not a destination. It is basically a journey. And you may be in the middle of it. You may be at the start of it. You may be post. But there's so much to learn and do, and you have agency. The actions that you take now with sleep, movement, nutrition, stress directly shape your brain's future. This is empowerment, not pressure. So you guys know I love what I do, and I love people. And I love women specifically that are feeling good, especially in the last third of their life. So if you would like to do a diagnostic strategy call, we're going to look at what is possible for your body in a blueprint. And it takes about 30 minutes. Message me, say blueprint, and I will make sure that you get that. Thank you so much for joining. And I hope you got one thing out of this call. I would love to hear what it is too. If you want to just message me and tell me one word, one thing, I would love it. All right. Have a great rest of your week.